Welcome everybody. This is our customer webinar Q&A series. We haven't really figured out a super catchy name for it yet, but ultimately the goal of these webinars is to every week we cover a topic, sort of do like a short demo on something that we see pretty often as either a problem or something that we can talk about that kind of gives people confidence in using Webgility. So the first topic that we thought we'd start off with was overselling and how to prevent that inside of Webgility. Ultimately, that means that we're going to be talking about things like SKUs, product identifiers, and how to make sure that there's consistency across your multiple stores and your QuickBooks. These webinars, just to kind of preface this again, we do these weekly, but they will kind of maintain a singular topic for 2 weeks in a row. The reason behind that is we obviously have a Webgility Online product and then a Webgility Desktop product. So last week we did the Webgility Online version of the same exact topic. So this week will be for Webgility Desktop specifically. If you're an online user, you are perfectly welcome to be here. We will still answer your questions. Just know that any product demos that we do and anything that we talk about will generally be from the lens of Webgility Desktop. There's not too many crazy differences, but there is some nuance there. So just to kind of dive right in, my name is John May. I am the engagement manager is my official title here at Webgility. So that means that I am in all of our webinars, any of our video content, and I do a lot of miscellaneous things. If you call into our support line, you'll hear my lovely voice. Don't know if I love that, but it is how it is. And then I'm joined by David Pond, who is our senior implementation specialist. Anything you want to introduce yourself with, David?
I've been working for Webgility for about, well, it's getting pretty close to 7 years now. So I guess that's why I'm senior. Been here for a while working on all this stuff. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad everybody else has joined. It's really good to be with you, John. You're really good at this stuff. So yeah, I'm just happy that we get to do this and help customers see how Webgility works.
Awesome. I appreciate the vote of confidence. I don't know that I'm used to doing webinars yet, even though I've been doing it for a couple of years. It never like really cements itself in, but I appreciate that. Okay, so for the agenda today, we're going to talk about just like a small sort of preface to the overall topic before we dive into Webgility firsthand. We're going to talk about SKUs, the foundational aspect of SKUs, and why they're so important for especially multi-channel businesses. And then after the first kind of opener, we're going to go into Webgility Desktop. David's going to do a demo, kind of explain the flow for using Webgility when it comes to SKUs and how to manage them. And then we'll end it with a Q&A. I see we do have a question in the question and answer box. I think we might save that for the Q&A just to make sure that we have enough time to get through the demo, and to make sure that it's not disjointed or anything like that. I do encourage that you guys ask questions as we go. If it does pertain directly to the topic that we're talking about, like if it's directly on topic with what we're going over, we might be able to get that question in right then. Otherwise, we'll get to it at the end in Q&A. If we don't get to your question or we don't answer it on the webinar, we definitely will follow up with you and make sure that we answer your questions. If there are questions regarding like billing or directly related to your subscription, it's kind of hard to do those on this webinar, mostly because like everybody else in the room isn't going to relate to your problem. So we generally, for like billing and like technical related stuff, we'll follow up with you, get our implementation or support team to schedule a call with you so we can fix it one-on-one. It just makes it easier for everybody. But cool. So just to start off, what are and why are product identifiers so important? Product identifier is just an easy way of saying something like a SKU or a barcode, or any code that you give to your product catalog. Generally, SKU and barcode are the most commonly used, or product name, product ID in QuickBooks. But ultimately, the goal here is that you're kind of stamping a unique code or a unique number or word or something directly onto every one of your products so that you can tell it apart from one another, right? That's a pretty simple concept, and I know everybody here probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. The one thing that we want to stress at Webgility is that the product identifier is probably the most important foundational aspect to make sure that your subscription or your Webgility software is working correctly. Because we use that to do all of your syncing from your orders, and then in turn kind of keeping your inventory in sync and so on and so forth. So one thing that I like to kind of relate product identifiers to, because I come from a sort of data analytics background a little bit, and I used to work in Excel spreadsheets a lot, is the unique identifier concept in Excel or Google Sheets or whatever you're using, any spreadsheet, is generally going to be something like an email address. So when you're looking at two different sets of data and you want to see the similarities between the two, you use something that you know is unique across both platforms, which is going to be generally email address. For Webgility, that unique identifier or that thing that's going to be consistent across your stores and your accounting is going to be a SKU. And again, it's because that SKU generally holds a very specific alphanumeric code that has either been set by the manufacturer or you can make one yourself that allows you to tell the difference between everything. So the reason that's important to Webgility specifically is because whenever we look at your product and your QuickBooks, if we don't see, like if we're looking at your Shopify and we see, a pair of headphones with a SKU, and then we look in QuickBooks and we don't see that SKU anywhere, we don't know where that pair of headphones is, even if it does exist in QuickBooks. So making sure that the SKU exists or that product identifier exists on both ends allows Webgility to kind of make that connection. And there's some ways that you can get around that connection automatically happening where you're kind of drawing a path between two products on each side, which David will get to in the demo there. So I just wanted to preface this whole conversation with why they're so important. I know everybody knows what a SKU is. I know everybody knows that like it's good to have SKUs or barcodes. But just to kind of reiterate that we see it a lot at Webgility, it's like one of the biggest things that I saw when I was in implementation was that people just wouldn't flat out have SKUs at all on their products, which can be sort of a nightmare. So I'll kind of pass it over to David here so that he can get into the demo aspect, and we'll continue to talk about these concepts and go over some like tips and tricks to make sure things are working properly for you.
Yeah,
So let me.
so thanks, John. That was good. Um, I've also wanted to kind of say this is like we've got multiple channels or multiple stores connected to Webgility. Um, when we do that, we use terms like multi-channel, omni-channel. That's when this stuff becomes really, important because one of the things that you have to really work with is having things match, and then you can control it from a centralized location. And that's what we're trying to do is say, hey, you can manage your inventory in QuickBooks, and then you don't have to go into each website and manually update quantities and change things on each of the stores manually for, every time there's a quantity change or you sell something. So, a centralized location makes it much easier. Um, one of the things you're seeing on the screen now, I hope everyone can see this, is our Webgility Desktop. Up at the top right here, you can see I've got a bunch of different stores connected. We configure each channel separately for how it's going to be bringing the orders in and posting them to your accounting. So right now I'm just connected to a Shopify to go over what we're going to talk about today. Product matching is important. Um, so once the products are here and and you can see them on orders like let me open up an order here, order details. You can see we have SKUs. John was mentioning SKU. SKU is the most standard, nomenclature for matching products. And yes, I have run into customers that they've got 22,000 products and they never used a SKU, but their product names are really, really long. So we can have other matching, but if you have this really long product name and you're trying to match it to something in QuickBooks, there are limitations on how many characters. It could match a portion of that name, but the color could be at the end of the name and it doesn't see that because it's already matched the first part of the name. So that's why SKUs are important. So let me go to the product catalog here. So Webgility can see what's in QuickBooks. It can see what's in web in your website. So you can see here at the top part, we have Shopify, we have products in Shopify. Here's where we can tell if quantities and prices are out of sync. Um, a lot of this is also done and set up through the automation. So what happens once everything is matched um, and syncing back and forth. We don't sync the product name and the product description and all that. Once those are set up in the store or in QuickBooks, we're syncing quantity, price, or cost back and forth from QuickBooks to the store. We can sync different directions. If someone has an online POS and they receive inventory on the POS, we can sync then from the POS as the unit, as the record into QuickBooks, or if we're with a bunch of stores connected, like I have here, you would sync from QuickBooks to the store. So each time you sell something on the store, it comes in as an order, posts to QuickBooks, removes that inventory from QuickBooks, and then QuickBooks through Webgility will update the quantities on the rest of the stores that are connected. So the most common way that we're going to connect these products. I'm going to go here to our configuration for connecting products. So go over here to our products. Is we have the SKU and then we have item name numbers. So in QuickBooks, QuickBooks has an item name number for QuickBooks Enterprise Desktop or QuickBooks Desktop. In QuickBooks itself, I'll go show you that. So here, if I open up one of these products, you can see here's item name number. They don't have a specific SKU field. So, right now, you have to kind of work with the products the way that, they're built. You would think, oh, SKU is the most common feature. Why doesn't QuickBooks have SKU? Well, item name number is supposed to be like SKU or name in QuickBooks. So if they match, Webgility will see that match automatically and then be able to sync quantities back and forth. I'm going to go back up to Shopify now. Here's Shopify. I'm going to go into a product in Shopify. There's a couple things that you have to have in your online store in order for us to be able to see that SKU and be able to transfer quantities, price, or cost back from QuickBooks to your online store. One of those things is a track quantity. A lot of the e-commerce sites will have track quantity on. When you're doing prices, cost changes, or quantity changes manually, especially your quantity, a lot of people have this track quantity turned off or continue selling when out of stock because they're not always getting those numbers changed manually. What we're trying to do is help from overselling a product. So we want to sync that number up to the websites. You have 10 items and you sell 3 of them on one website. We want to sync that the remaining quantity is on sync back up to the sites so that all the sites have the quantity and it all reduces as you sell the items off of each or one of the websites. So track quantity does have to be on. You can also see here the SKU. You can have a barcode. Everyone asks me about barcodes. If you're using a barcode reader and you're scanning barcodes, a lot of times barcodes then can be used as your SKU. The only item I see there to mention is sometimes I see people receive product. They might have multiple different colors or sizes on a product, but it has the same barcode from the vendor. So sometimes you might have to modify the SKU to show that you are selling different colors or different sizes or something like that on a product. And the barcode might just be a general barcode for that item.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like if anything, if you are using a barcode, it might be good for the SKU specifically, amend it with some sort of variation at the end to kind of call out that variant.
And then talking about variants, good segue here. If you have variants, here are color variants. You need to have a SKU for each of those. When you're selling the product, it's not the parent name that you're selling. You're selling what you have a stock of the variant that you're selling. So when you go into a variant, you want to make sure that each variant has its own unique SKU. And you can see here, this, each one of these has a different SKU. Down here, you can see its location is also important. So on your online store, a lot of the online stores will have a location. I'm also going to go into warehouse locations in QuickBooks and talk about that too. But right now, these are in the San Francisco location. So for this channel that's connected to Webgility, you need to make sure that it's set up so that it knows that San Francisco is the location where you're keeping your quantities in Shopify. So when we sync back up to Shopify, it puts the quantity or changes the quantity numbers in the website. I'm going to go back down here to the warehouse locations. Each store can have a different warehouse location. Typically, if you're selling on 3 or 4 or 5, we have customers that have just 30 different stores. A lot of times, the bulk of material goods are coming out of one warehouse. This comes in handy to keep inventory in line, but then you can break inventory locations out to different locations like East Coast, West Coast, by state. If you have a different warehouse by a different state and you want to ship from that warehouse, you also can break out inventory locations. Like if you have Amazon FBA and you send inventory off to Amazon, you can set up an inventory location in QuickBooks that is an FBA location. And that keeps that inventory separated from your general warehouse location that you can sell to all your other stores. It's a big, management issue on QuickBooks Online because it doesn't have inventory locations. But if you especially have Amazon and then you have other e-commerce stores, it's really nice to have inventory locations available in QuickBooks and turned on, and then we can work with that. One of the other things I get questions on is people want to track P&L, their inventory asset, income account, cost of goods sold. They want to see, their reports and make sure everything's looking good. And they'll say, well, where do you put that in Webgility? And really, that's not something that is a Webgility item. A lot of what Webgility does is transfer everything from e-commerce stores to QuickBooks, and from QuickBooks, we send those quantities as we've been discussing back up to the websites. But the cost of goods sold, the income account, the inventory asset, those things are set up by product. And Webgility does work with, different products, different product types. So as advanced inventory, we have the ability to have non-inventory for drop shipping. If someone's doing drop shipping, we can do regular inventory products like this is an inventory product. We work with group items, assembly items. We even have, if you set up unit of measure in QuickBooks, we can work with unit of measure in Webgility. There's also other advanced inventory to help make sure that you're not overselling. I'm going to go to the products here and show that. So inventory, additional mapping. So you have quantity and weight. You can get into bins. You can get into unit of measure. So if you're actually using unit of measure, these are all advanced inventory controls. Specifically to stop from overselling, we have some upgraded, for some of the higher accounts of Webgility. We have sync settings where you can go in and adjust even more granular controls. So if you have multiple different stores listed here, you could reduce the amount of inventory in one of them by percentages so that it still leaves some quantity in the store so you don't oversell. If you have lower quantity numbers, there's some items here that can help you um, tell Webgility, I don't want to sell it down to zero. I always want to show a certain number, or I want to only sell a certain percent of quantity on a store to help with overselling,
Yeah,
issues
this
that
is
that
if you
might
want to hop
happen.
back over to the store settings, this is actually a really good kind of answer to David's question in chat. I know nobody else can see it at this moment because I have to mark it as answered, but David asked about selling on a third source, so a third channel, because he already has an eBay and a website, and uses QuickBooks POS, but wants to add TikTok Shop. So this is sort of the solution to the problem that you're having, where you're saying you're double selling when you're using multiple sites. If you can set up your advanced inventory to make sure that you sell a little bit less of it, or you show a little bit less of it in stock on one of the stores or all of your stores, that means that you'll always have a little bit left in your main inventory, so you're not overselling or you're not selling out when it's already been sold on maybe eBay or on your website. So that is, I'd say, probably the easiest way to fix what you're talking about. But David, if you're having trouble and just want to feel more confident in how things are set up to make sure that you're not double selling, just schedule a call with our CS team or implementation team, and we can just make sure that those settings are set up correctly and that your stores are all kind of aligned.
Yeah. Um, there's always, and I saw stuff in there about customizations. There's always going to be different issues that people have because there's like 29 different stores and marketplaces that Webgility can connect to.
Yeah.
So they're all configured differently, and believe it or not, everybody does their accounting a little differently. So depends on whether you're B2B, and we have been adding a bunch of B2B features to Webgility. Right now, we've got a few more added to online and some coming out with our desktop product to allow, customer matching, B2B. I saw a question in there about invoicing. So those things are, you know, right now they're customizations, a lot of them, if you've got special needs that we don't currently have, but we are supporting and working in that direction of supporting more B2B functionality and Webgility, both our online and desktop version. So if, those are things that we'll probably do in future webinars where we'll go over some of those features too and how they work.
Yeah, and to because I know Ian also put something in chat. And if you're putting anything in chat and you feel like you want everybody else in the chat to see it, make sure under the little to button before you type in your chat message, you can set it so that everyone can see it. I'll try to read the questions just so everybody knows what I'm answering. But that just something to let you guys know of. So Ian has been sort of talking about his kind of experience using WebGility specifically with kind of a more complicated setup with one using B2B, but more importantly having components and how that conflicts with SKUs. So one thing I do want to point out is that there are so many different ways to run a business in e-commerce and even more ways to kind of manage that business on the back end using QuickBooks and using your stores. So just keep in mind that there's always, or at the very least, for the most part, ways to work around any issue that you're having, especially in WebGility. Our product is built to be versatile. So while and something that like David is going to be showing is that there's a straightforward way of doing everything, but that is not always going to fix or work or jive correctly, specifically with some of these more complicated, like component assembly item, bundle item stuff, because there are some more variables to consider when you have those intricacies. So just wanted to point that out. Like I said, the product and WebGility desktop and online desktop more so is able to kind of work through most of those workflow challenges. But if on this webinar you feel like you're still confused or there's something that's still not being pointed out, um, get with our team. We can kind of try to work through the workflow that you're using and see if there's either a better way or something that WebGility can do either on the back end behind the settings to kind of make it more malleable, or something that we can build out. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
sort of something that I mentioned to Ian as well. We did recently open up a customer advisory panel. I'll kind of talk more about this at the very end, but the panel, essentially you get paid to kind of beta test with us. So participate in surveys, tell us your experiences with the product, and then work with our engineering team if you'd like to kind of help us develop some of these more intricate workflows out going forward. So just something I wanted to point out. If that's something you're interested in, we can all talk about that at the end. But sorry, David, big
Yeah.
derailment. I just wanted to answer both
No,
David's
that's
question and Ian's question sort of in the same breath there. So
they're really good questions because I'll work with a customer. I'm always trying to configure all of our settings and configurations to their workflow as close as I can with what we have. It is something on the desktop version that we can do customizations. So as mentioned with our customers joining here, they've got a very customized workflow, and sometimes that takes working on customizations in Webgility to kind of fix that out. Like I said, again, we are working on B2B stuff, but there are customizations with products where people are building products on the fly. People are using a module in an e-commerce store that allows them to have a configurator on the website. Those are always complex things that are kind of a little more difficult to work with. But overall, we can get pretty close to that and then maybe customize a part of it so that that workflow will work through Webgility. And then will support keeping that working through all of our versions as they update. It's a challenge for us, but that is a way for us to also learn on how to advance our application. Um, so in the future, the more and more people that do reach out and say, hey, I'd like to have it do this, that gives us an idea of what we need to customize. And I know B2B is something that we're working really a lot with right now. But same thing with like having a module in your website for, different stores like TikTok and other stores going through, say, a Shopify or a WooCommerce. Those are challenges too, and we do have settings to help with those challenges. So we know they exist and we work as best we can with those. One of the things I'd like to talk about here is um, on our Webgility online version, there's product syncing from the online store where you can add a product to QuickBooks on the fly. Like if you're managing your products in a POS store on the website, and that's where you're adding and receiving products, you can have it make the product into QBO. But on the desktop, we can sync a product typically different directions. So we can take the products like you see here missing in QuickBooks. These products can be set up and you can go to create a product and it will make that. It's a one-time feature to send a product into QuickBooks or a group of products. Say you're just starting out with an empty QuickBooks. You don't have all your products in there, but you have them in your Shopify. We can then help assist in transferring all those products into QuickBooks. We can also do it the opposite direction. So we can do this manually in our product menu here where you select missing in Shopify. And then we can send the products from QuickBooks to Shopify. Now, one of the things you'll notice here is, we don't have images. You'd have to either get the image and browse to a folder that has the image, or you put the bulk of information up on the website and then you go drop images in and maybe update the descriptions. As you can see in QuickBooks, you might not have the descriptions in there. So at least it gets the start of your product list into the website to work on. Once they're transferred, like I said, it's not something that you change a description and it'll sync the description. We're typically syncing price, quantity, and cost on some of the websites for your products that are already matching. And matching would be like if you have your products here, we have different ways of matching. We have where they automatically match. So between the item name number and SKU here, you can see these are automatically matching. I I did some earbuds in the Shopify store, so I'll look at my earbuds and see how they're matching here. I'll try and move this along as quickly as I can here. But
Yeah, Webgility Desktop tends to be a little more complicated.
yeah, has a few more features, definitely. Um, but then if something doesn't match, you can map it, and that happens a lot, especially if you have like an Amazon store or something like that. You can't always change the SKUs that are on Amazon. So you might match your Walmart, your Shopify, your WooCommerce, your eBay. They may all have your SKUs in there and they all match QuickBooks, but on Amazon, now they've got an ASIN and a different SKU that is being matched, or you made the SKU once and it's really hard to change the SKU. So you can come in here and say, okay, I want to map a product. So you can go in here and we got a couple of different features for auto mapping or manually looking for a match. And basically you can go in and match these products and say, um, this actually uh, matches this one here. So once you match it, then it stays matched. You can also break that matching if you accidentally match the wrong item and then rematch it. So I use the term mapping. We've used that for a long time, but it's really just matching products
Yeah.
that from one SKU to another SKU.
Yeah, perfect. I personally liked the term mapping because it's like you're drawing a map from one place to another. But I understand the confusion with saying matching versus mapping. So yeah, automatic versus manual is how we're gonna look at it now.
And I'm going to take a quick jump into our automation. So once everything's been tested, once everything's been posted and works in your accounting and everything is set up, that's when you go to the automation. And the automation is basically this little clock up here. You click on it. I'm going to go into the settings here. Um, you can have the orders download automatically. There are payout reports and settlement reports that you can download and post for fees and marking orders as paid if you post them as an open invoice. Won't get into that right now. That's a different webinar entirely to go through all that. We can post the orders to QuickBooks automatically, and we have settings here for that. We can post updates. So if there's updates on an order, it can post certain updates back to the sales channel. Like if you're tracking shipping IDs, shipping from QuickBooks Shipping Manager, you can send that tracking ID up to the website. We can post payout reports, we can update QuickBooks items, and we can also sync products. Here's where you can sync price, quantity, or cost, depending on your setup. And you can sync it from QuickBooks to the website or from the sales channel to QuickBooks. Majority of our customers are controlling their inventory and quantities and all that from QuickBooks, but we will have online POS customers that will want to sync the opposite direction because that's what they've been doing forever, on their POS systems, and that's, how they manage them. So, yep, once this is all set up and turned on, then all you do is launch the automation, and it does all that in the background and keeps everything up to date.
Yeah, a couple things on the scheduler just to like I feel like it's always worth pointing out. You'll see those intervals in the scheduler as like from 15 minutes all the way up to 24 hours. Um, Try to be as realistic as possible when you're looking at your intervals for syncing. Some people that I've talked to will be like, I want to sync every 5 minutes. I need all of my inventory and my pricing to sync every 5 minutes, which is a great idea in thought, right? Like having it sync as often as possible, as close to real time as possible. But consider the speed of the PC that you have the scheduler running on, and consider the size of your product catalog when you're syncing things. In a QuickBooks with
Yeah,
20,000 products, that computer might not be able to get through that whole list of 20,000 before that sync hits that 5 minutes. So what you're going to do is just end up churning over and over and over, and you're not actually going to get anything done. So generally, and David, you might have a more specific recommendation, but generally start higher and then kind of work your way lower as you see that your PC can handle it. Not just your PC, but your network, and again, your product catalog as well.
yeah, I'm going to do air quotes here. Real time, real time. Everybody wants real time quantity syncing. We totally get it. Amazon, for one, limits you at how often you can ping them for a sync. So you can't go down to 5 minutes on an Amazon. They used to let you do that, and then they would ban you for syncing for over accessing your account, and then they would put you on a back burner for like 15, 20 minutes and kind of almost throttle you because they didn't want you pinging them like every 5 minutes. Um, uh, you know, if you go to Walmart connection, a Walmart connection, I think is got a every hour or every half hour, there's a longer duration there. They don't let you sync a shorter time span. Most of the online stores, you could go down to 5 minutes, but like John was saying, say this list of stores here is all syncing quantities and all syncing orders and stuff. There isn't really a computer fast enough to sync all of that in 5 minutes. There's not a website connection. There's not a store that runs that fast. So basically, the more stores you have, the more your catalog, the size of your catalog is, the more you're selling, the more active everything is. 30 minutes is a good starting point, to let it run through all these different syncs for different stores and different quantities and all that kind of stuff. So you're not like saying, hey, I want the software to like be pinging it constantly. You're telling it 5 minutes, it's not even done with the first store syncing, and you're asking it to go again in 5 minutes. So you have to think about that. It's a good way to kind of look at it and give your stores some breathing time. Yes, it would be great to have, real time instant syncing, but it doesn't really exist right now. So I'm sure once everything's fiber optic and fast and there's some new technology, things will get faster. They always do get faster. So something can happen for that in the future. But I think that's really all my explanation right now. When when we do have products here and something doesn't match, you can actually match it on the fly. It would go into an error folder if it didn't know what the product was, and you can then map it or make the product from a window that pops open here just on the order details when you go to post it. Um, it's just this really helps the more stores you have to manage it. I've had so many people like, wow, that takes out so much work that we used to have to do manually. And that's the whole point of this is to manage multiple different store connections, kind of all from one location. So I
Yeah,
think
yeah, and I think it's important to call out that like I know you mentioned customizations and like adding stuff to our product as well. I think this is kind of in the same conversation that uh it definitely can seem like a lot of work when you're setting up all of these, like I said, intricate processes where you're adding all of your stores. Maybe you have 15 stores and you need a different setup for each one because they're all on different platforms or they all require different workflows, like some B2B, some B2C, and that is a lot of work. Even in Webgility, going in to set all those things up to make sure that they work properly with your workflow is probably going to take some time, either with our team or internally on your side, to make sure that things are set up properly. And it's the same thing with like if you went in and you didn't have any SKUs and you're like, why are my products not syncing? uh it's a bit of work to go in and have to go and set up that foundation to make sure that things sync properly. But ultimately, once you've done the bulk of that work, once you've set things up to your liking, for the most part, it can be a little bit more of a set it and forget it situation where it's working in the background. Sure, you need to go in and check on things every once in a while, but if you have 15 stores and you're not having to go and create sales receipts or invoices and manage your cost of goods sold and sync the inventory and stuff like that, that saves you so much time. So it just continues to scale more and more the more stores you have. And that's the overall point that we're trying to make, is that you set things up from a foundation to make sure that whenever you do sync any information from one side to the other, that it's as efficient as possible and that it kind of works with your workflow and is representative of your business.
so. Did we have any other questions, John, that we needed to kind of address or look at?
I don't see any in the Q&A panel. It looks like in chat there's nothing. Yeah, any questions? This is the best time to ask your questions here. Like I said, if they're like specific, like billing, or you're having a really specific issue that maybe we would need to look at, I'd say get with our customer service or implementation team. We can fix that, no problem. But anything regarding workflows, features that you'd like to see, I mean, this is a good time for you guys to just kind of let us know how you feel things are progressing for you with Webgility, anything that you'd like us to build out. I know I mentioned, because Ian mentioned that he was a B2B business. We are continuing to build out B2B functionality. Right now, the functionality is sort of limited to a couple platforms just that we're able to work with on that B2B basis. So BigCommerce and Shopify are the two big B2B sellers that we are pushing that functionality for. Obviously, with things like Amazon FBA, that's sort of built in natively. But yeah, I see a couple things coming in. Reggie asked, how do we need to set up QuickBooks for inventory sync? Do we need to enable advanced inventory control? That depends on how you have your inventory set up. You can, if you have a simple catalog, and maybe David, you can go into more breadth on this, but if you have a simple catalog, you don't need to use advanced inventory control as long as you have a SKU or a product identifier on whatever store you're using, and that matches the SKU that you have in QuickBooks. We're able to see that they're the same item, and then we can sync those accordingly. So whenever we pull in an order, and this is kind of the life cycle of a sync, whenever we pull in an order from Shopify and we go to post that to QuickBooks, it then takes the inventory out of whatever inventory you have in QuickBooks and kind of compares it against the price that's in QuickBooks and the cost of goods sold that's in QuickBooks. So it kind of starts off that domino chain reaction, so to speak. So once you have the sync set up either automatically or you do it manually and you push that back to the store whenever you make inventory changes on QuickBooks, that's sort of the whole ecosystem there. I don't know if you want to add anything to that, David.
No, no, that's exactly right. I've had so many people that had to go and take and they're constantly updating their quantities manually. Um, Amazon, for one, if you go and don't maintain your quantities properly, they dock you for not having the product available to ship right away. Amazon is not suited for companies that are selling onesie twosies of products. So they want bulk. They want, you have a lot of product available so that it can ship. But there's a lot of companies that are in between. They're not down at the, just a couple of items each, but they're not, hundreds and hundreds of quantity on items. But you still have to really pay attention to your quantities so Amazon doesn't dock you. And this definitely helps you do that. If you set this up properly and everything's syncing, you're separating your FBA from your other warehouse locations and stuff like that, especially with Webgility Desktop and QuickBooks Enterprise, then you're maintaining as close as possible a proper inventory number. If you do have overselling issues, then you can go into those advanced inventory controls and tell it not to sell down to zero. Always, you know, program it to try and help without selling down to a negative number or zero. So there are some controls there, but yeah, this in general helps. It doesn't completely stop it. You could have somebody buy the same item off of 3 different stores all at the same time, and
Mhm.
there's no real way
There's
to
no way to
to
get
fix
around that.
that. Yeah,
Unless you set up in that advanced inventory where you're saying you always want to keep a specific percentage on hand.
yeah.
That is the
You
way that you can get around that so that you're not,
Yeah, and
running
that
into that
means you
issue.
have to have higher quantities. So again,
Yeah.
that's not for small quantity sellers, but typically, if I see somebody and they're constantly having troubles on Amazon and they only have, anywheres from 1 to 5 products of each of their products, I'm like, it's not really the platform, for you guys because especially if you have other stores you're selling on, you want to keep some of that product always available, and then you have to take it off and make sure it's not available, even though you have product, to
Yeah.
stop the overselling. And a lot of customers will come back and say, "But I want to sell that product." I'm like, "Well, other channels are probably better suited for lower quantities because they're not going to dock you if you oversell."
We
So,
had a question, David, about assembly items and setting those up in WebGility. I posted the link to the help article that talks about assembly and group items, but could you show just like real quick where that's accessed and sort of how that works? Um, and while you're pulling that up, I kind of wanted to answer because we got a lot of questions all of a sudden. We
so that was an assembly item or a group item. question? Oh,
Yeah. It looks like it was Johnny Giordano asked how to set up assembly items. I sent the article in the chat for anybody that wants to see for how to
so
set up and like sort of our frequently asked questions. But I don't know if
so so those are set up. Webgility itself works with assembly items or group items. Um, those are set up in QuickBooks. So whether or not it's an assembly item or a group item, or a non-inventory. Those are all set up in Webgility. So a non-inventory item is not going to sync any quantities because obviously it's non-inventory. It has to be an inventory item to sync quantities. An assembly item is if you're building assemblies in QuickBooks, we will go and sell, be able to sync the number of builds you have or actually build the product if you have enough of the assembly items available when we post to QuickBooks. The group items, if you're selling and using group items, we have some controls in Webgility to post that to QuickBooks and back up the quantities back up to the store. The quantities will take the lowest item quantity in that group and use that as the quantity number for the website that it syncs back up to the website. So hopefully that answers the questions, but assembly items, group items, um, individual inventory or non-inventory. That's all how you set it up in QuickBooks.
yeah, and if you've already gotten it set up in QuickBooks and you want to make sure that WebGility is working properly with assembly items, because there are some menus, that is what the article I sent you kind of pertains to, is making sure that there's a couple check boxes just to make sure that we're able to pull in the assembly items properly, and
Yeah,
looks like
there's
David's going
a
there.
for group items, there's a group item adjustment. What this does is allow group items typically when you post to QuickBooks would average out the product as it posted into QuickBooks. Say, you sold it for, $6, it would average each of the, products out to be like $3 a piece if there were two. That average doesn't help your P&L. So what you do is you put in a group item adjustment, what we have showing here for a group item adjustment. What that does is allow you to sell it at a different price on the website than what those items in the group actually cost, are labeled for, the sales amount in QuickBooks. When we post it, it takes the difference and puts it into a group item adjustment line. That way, the actual price for each of the products goes into your sales receipt or your invoice, and your P&L comes out right on those products. In assembly items, we have build assembly products before creating transaction, and we can do order date, current date. We can actually make an error if you don't have enough quantity of items to build the assembly. A lot of people build their assembly items ahead of time in QuickBooks, and then we just sync that pre-built number up to the website for the products. But we do have people that also just have it build the assembly when it posts the order to QuickBooks. Hopefully that answers a couple of those questions.
Yeah, yeah, and like I said in chat, we can, I don't know, I'm sure you can probably hang out for another 10 minutes. We'll cut it at in another 9 or so minutes just to,
I
put on.
I do see a tax one in there. I'm going to answer it. This wasn't
Yeah, perfect.
specifically on
I'm
tax.
working on answering the ones that I can through chat, so.
Okay. The sales tax, I'll go over that real quick. Webgility does not um, calculate tax. We funnel it from the website to QuickBooks. If you have Avalara or TaxJar or something like that, we work with that. If you're posting orders, if a product is non-taxable, it should be non-taxable in your website and non-taxable in QuickBooks. That's set at the product level. If you have a customer that's non-taxable, what you do is you have that customer as non-taxable in the website. We match that customer in Webgility to the customer name in QuickBooks, and then that customer in QuickBooks would have to be set as non-taxable. So it's not something that you set tax or unset tax or set a customer as taxable or a product as taxable or non-taxable in Webgility. Those are things that are set up on the website and in QuickBooks, and we just connect the dots. So B2B is typically non-taxable, so you have to have a B2B company name or a B2B customer name that you're matching to the company or customer name in QuickBooks. that company or customer in QuickBooks needs to be set up as a non-taxable customer in QuickBooks. When we post orders to QuickBooks, we go through a setting and say use um, the customer settings. Oops, let me get to the right menu here. I know I'm talking a little fast, but obviously, if you need help, just reach out to us and we can help you configure that. But here under the setup for how you post, um, right here, use transaction terms, just use default terms for everybody. But use customer terms means that if the customer name matches the customer in QuickBooks and the customer in QuickBooks is non-taxable, it's going to connect those two. And then when the order is posted into QuickBooks, it's going to be non-taxable. I do see people in QuickBooks, they do not have their sales tax set up in their preferences. It does have to be set up for the sales tax properly in QuickBooks. That means you have to have sales tax turned on. You have to have your most common sales tax usually is not a no tax. Your most common is if you pay tax in a nexus, where you're incorporated in, that would be your most common sales tax. And then if you go to customers here in the customer center, these customers, if this was a B2B and you're looking at sales tax settings, here's where you set them as non-taxable. So you're saying this customer is non-taxable, here's a resale number, and then you can just put them as a non-taxable. And that's how you connect the dots. It should be set as non-taxable on the website, in QuickBooks, and we just connect it to. Hopefully that helps with that question.
Perfect. And then just a couple more questions. Reggie asked on the Shopify side, do we need to enable product options to manage inventory when we want to always continue selling when inventory counts have issues and go negative? So sort of what David pointed out when he went into Shopify earlier was that on each product, there's a checkbox that says track inventory, I believe it is, right? Track quantity.
Yeah,
And then there's another one that says continue selling when out of stock. That's what you want to check, especially if you're trying to, continue to sell when things go negative.
yeah. If you're a manufacturer, you might want to track your quantity in Shopify. Some do, some don't. Continue selling when out of stock. That's fine. I see a lot of manufacturers use that. I also see if you're doing drop shipping, you would set the continue selling when out of stock. Because you're not warehousing that product and you're always going to reach out to a vendor and have them drop ship that item to the customer. So there's, lots of different controls here that you can use to manage different inventory scenarios.
Perfect. Perfect. And okay, last couple questions. Andrew put in chat, does Webgility have a community chat room or board to share ideas, solutions, and struggles? I love that you asked that. So right now we are actually looking into sort of building out a sort of a community resource, not necessarily like a chat to ask why something's not working, more specifically a resource where you guys can share your ideas, share what works, what doesn't, share product updates from Webgility, and then kind of go through all of this sort of content as well, where we're talking about how to do specific things and make Webgility work for you. As of right now, that's not a thing, but it is definitely coming. As for what you can do in the interim, I know I mentioned that customer advisory panel. I'm actually going to drop the link for that in chat. It is open to any customer right now. We'll kind of determine if we have the room for your specific use case. We're looking for customers of all different types that we can communicate with and make sure that we understand the functionality and where we need to build the product out. You do get paid for, again, for the kind of participation that you have with us, whether it be just surveys, interviews with our engineering team, and then beta testing as well. So that would be what you could do in the interim to kind of share your ideas and tell us where we can improve and things you'd like to see. Again, that community is coming though, so look out for that. And then the last couple questions here. If you have a sale on eBay, quantity does not magically update. I have to sync if you sell something locally. That
So if hopefully I don't misunderstand this question, but we have people that will sell stuff in just like their B2B is manually done out of QuickBooks. And then they will be still syncing quantities up to their website. If you remove quantity in QuickBooks, but you're selling something B2B, it's going to sync that new number up to eBay. There may be some instances, and I don't know exactly about this question, that there might be some way you're doing something on a website that stops us from syncing a quantity to it. eBay itself, there are different settings for eBay for having products when you're zero quantity, end that product sale, take the product off the website, those kind of settings. Webgility has some settings to go along with that. That should be able to help in some of those scenarios, but you need to reach out to our support team if you're having any issues and see if we have a configuration to help with that. We're not shy. We build a chat support into our online version, into our desktop version. You can always reach out to our support team at support@webgility.com. We do try to make sure that we keep our customers as supported as possible and react as quickly as possible to get you, what you need. So, don't be shy. We're here to help as much as we can.
Perfect. And then Fernando, I saw your question about group items. Honestly, it seems like that is going to be something our team needs to take a look at. Group items can get a little complicated, especially when things aren't necessarily syncing up properly. I've seen just like maybe a checkbox not be checked properly or something like that. So I'm going to have our team reach out, and anybody that I message directly to say that we're going to have our team reach out, I'm going to get with our support team and make sure that we start that dialogue right after this. Um, but yeah, if you continue to run into any issues, that is 100% what our support team is here for. If you feel like there's stuff that Webgility could greatly benefit from that would make your business easier to run, let us know. Sign up for that customer advisory panel. It definitely helps us build a better product for you guys. And then keep an eye out for not only the next webinar session that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks for Webgility Desktop. You can attend the one on the Webgility Online days, which is going to be next Wednesday. But for Webgility Desktop, the next date is going to be May 7th. So keep an eye out for the email on that one. And then really appreciate you guys joining. Like David said, we want to make sure you guys are supported as possible. So this is all for you guys. This is all to make sure that we're communicating the stuff that we see on a regular basis that maybe customers don't know already, especially if they're a new seller or something like that, and then answer
Yeah.
any questions that you guys have when we can, at least. I know we're not answering them all in the moment, but that is our goal to give you guys the answers you
Yeah,
need.
and you, John, you mentioned, the group items and syncing quantities. There's some nuances there. There can be a checkbox. There can be a setting that needs to be adjusted. There can be a refresh of the product list. One of the things is some people have available quantity and some people have on-hand quantity. Those settings need to be set so that they match how you're running your quantities in QuickBooks. So there are some nuances, and our support team can look into that and make sure that they're syncing properly.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you, David. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Hopefully to see you guys on the next one. Treat this like I don't know, maybe your Wednesday lunchtime learning session. Just drop in if you have any questions. We're happy to answer them. But everybody, enjoy the rest of your week, and thanks again.